Within the Mara ecosystem, the Mara Reserve is over 300,000 acres, but then adjacent to it is a much larger area, which was the former Mara ecosystem, much of which has become heavily settled now and fenced, and people have moved into the area, so that a lot of that habitat has been lost to wildlife. So we've been involved at Gamewatchers Safaris in developing wildlife conservancies within the dispersal area, the former Mara ecosystem. We are involved in leasing over 100,000 acres in the conservancies that we've put together with our Maasai partners and some other tourism partners. In Olkinye we have 20,000 acres, in Nabosho over 50,000 acres, and in Olare Motoroki over 30,000 acres. Now within those conservancies, the Maasai community have leased parcels of land to us to be protected habitat for wildlife. And the numbers of animals have increased dramatically. They're absolutely teeming with wildlife, to a greater degree in many cases than the reserve itself. And of course, as far as the visitors are concerned, they're seeing that wildlife with very low tourism density. We've established a formula of no more than 1 tent to 700 acres and no more than 12 tents in any one camp, no more than 1 vehicle in 1,400 acres. That means that visitors see the wildlife without the presence of hordes of minibuses and other tourists, and this is something that they really appreciate. There's a huge threat to the continuation of the conservancies if we're not able to generate sufficient income to pay for them. The land has to deliver a return for the landowners that is as good as they could get if they were farming it or cultivating it or using it for wheat or other developments. And so the money has to be found to pay for the conservancies to continue. What we've been doing up to now is relying on tourism to do that, and so we need tourists to come and stay in our small camps. As long as we achieve a regular inflow of tourists, we can afford to pay the leases, we can afford to pay the running costs, such as wardens and rangers and some infrastructure to keep the conservancies going. And so we depend very much on tourism. If we don't have the tourist visitors to the conservancies, if we cannot generate the income to cover their costs, then the landowners will not be able to leave their parcels of land as protected wildlife habitat. They'll want to fence them, they'll want to turn them into farmland, just as has happened outside of the conservancies. If you go beyond the conservancy boundaries, you'll find that the area is becoming fragmented and becoming fenced and becoming heavily settled. So we need to see tourist visitors coming to stay with us, and so that income from the tourists is going to help to keep the conservancies going. The communities who own the conservancies are definitely seeing benefits from having them in existence. First of all the individual landowners who own parcels of land that make up the conservancies, which range in size from maybe 20 acres to 170 acres, they all receive a regular monthly rent payment. Now that rent payment has been devised so that it matches the alternative opportunities from their land. So they are able to continue to own the land within the conservancies and to receive a steady monthly income. They still own it and it's still theirs. Also, we give a priority in employment to family members from the landowning communities. So all our Porini camps, for example, are staffed by Maasai family members from the people who own the land. So employment and livelihoods is also important. And then we have a number of outreach projects between all the different camps. We support schools, we have bursaries to pay the school fees, we support various initiatives and projects to help the community so that they're seeing the conservancies actually generating additional benefits beyond employment and beyond the leases. And finally, the land itself is in very good shape. For the landowner, he sees his parcel of land improving. The vegetation has been regenerated. If you look at the difference between inside the conservancies and outside, it's like chalk and cheese. So the landowner sees that the land has improved, he sees the grass improve, and during periods of drought, we engage with the landowners and we have a controlled grazing program so that people are able to bring their livestock in and to utilize some of the grass that's been saved within the conservancies. So all of that together makes for a positive approach by the communities, which is why they've been allowing us to lease the land, why they've been working closely with us to enable these conservancies to continue. We started in the Amboseli ecosystem nearly 20 years ago at Selenke, and then we brought that concept here to the Mara in 2004, 12 years ago, and they've been a great success. People now recognize that the conservancies are a very good way of conserving habitat outside of the parks and reserves, bearing in mind that the human population is increasing significantly and the amount of space available for wildlife is reducing. And so wildlife needs safe habitat in which to live. The biggest threat to wildlife is not from poaching, but is from losing habitat, having nowhere to live, and then coming into conflict with people who are living in the area that the wildlife also occupy. So all in all, we believe that the conservancies have been recognised now as one solution to conserving wildlife within East Africa.